been working around tomorrow's weather, trying to schedule some things in, and just commented to Deb Hall, did we really used to do this every single day, try to figure out how to get the work done around the weather? She just texted me, she said, yep, we did, without thinking twice. And yeah, I guess we did do it without even thinking twice. Sure not thinking twice and 3 times about it today. Hey, Margie, how are you? And Nancy managed to get on and is even identified as Nancy. Ta-da! It is wonderful today. I was only able to go out for a little while because I was behind on things here at the desk. But I was out, and I did have I had a sweatshirt on, but that's great this time of year. It didn't smell like spring though, not yet. Didn't quite smell like spring. Sounds like spring. Birds are definitely having a ball out there. Had an interesting episode with the yard waste. Since we don't have a chipper anymore, and we had a heck of a lot of branches come down, I filled a lot of bags with twigs and stuff that I raked up off the lawn, including a lot of things that blew in from the neighbors. And I put the bags all in the garage because I don't want them to get wet. I hate rebagging stuff. And yard waste wasn't being picked up until April. Well, April 1st was Wednesday, and Wednesday is our pickup day. So I told Steve I wasn't going to be here. I was out of town. I said, just put a few of them out. I hate to overload those guys at the beginning of the year. Everybody putting out 20 some bags, and we had close to 30 bags. But Steve got into it, and he put them all out. Came home last night from the airport, and bags were still there. They'd sat out all day Wednesday and all day Thursday. Oh. And I let the dogs out about midnight, and it was raining. I said, no. So at midnight, I went out, and 2 by 2 in the wheelbarrow brought all the bags back into the garage, got soaked, got up this morning, and there goes the yard waste truck. But, well, they'll get put out eventually. Steve tells me, since he has a thing that measures his steps, that putting out that many bags back and forth down our driveway is just about a mile walking. It's an interesting way to measure that, but that's what he does. Hey, Carol. Hi, Chris. How you doing? If anybody's got anything that they want to say, just go ahead and turn on your mic and say it. There's just a few of us here right now. And on as nice a day as it is today and an Easter weekend, I have a feeling that we won't have a lot of people here. We can just kind of speak among ourselves, smoke them if we got them kind of thing. I do have a couple of questions. 72nd time. I really should change this snowdrop. I have not done that. Priscilla, hey Priscilla, what timing? I already emailed and I talked with Priscilla about this, but I thought I would tell you that Paul and Priscilla Needle did the same kind of thing that Steve and I used to do when we were writing the pieces we called 45-mile-per-hour garden, things you saw as you drove by. They went driving by and she said, they're at 45 miles an hour. Wait, what's all that pink stuff underneath that ginkgo tree? All that pink stuff was fruit. You get a tree that gets to be, when they get to be about 20 years old, they're able to flower. And if it's a female tree, because someone, I wonder if that's Oak Park, because someone didn't know to order the grafted, for sure these are male trees that won't someday drop stinky fruit on the ground. So she collected some fruit and wanted to know how to get the seed going. And all of the fleshy fruited plants, everything from grapes and raspberries to ginkgos and peaches and pears, you need to wash the seed. The fruit is actually an inhibitor to germination, while the fruit, the fleshy part of the fruit is still there. That seed's not going to germinate. So you pretty much have to soak them because you don't want to scrape the stuff off of there. So you soak them in clean water and get the fruit off of them. And she's gone ahead and planted some seeds and some ginkgos. They might need. We had 2 conflicting reports, and they're both books that we trust, sources that we trust. seed propagation theory and practice says that that's all you need. Wash the fruit off of the ginkgo, and it will germinate. 70 to 80% of it will germinate in 5 weeks. But our other book, textbook, says that they need cold treatment. Priscilla says, well, they laid there all winter. They must have been cold, and they must have been 40 degrees for 2 months, 2 to 3 months already. So we'll see. We'll see whether we get some ginkgo trees. And then probably Priscilla will be trying to give them away as the unknown, whether it's a male or female tree. Of course, in Asia and some other countries, they're grafting for the female trees, like we graft for particular apple trees. They graft for the female trees because they want the fruit. It's a big part of the medical supplies, medical ingredients to have ginkgo fruit. And they want the particular trees that are just like some of our apple trees are wider branched and lower branched and wider spreading, so they're easier to pick. So they do choose for female trees. Meanwhile, in the United States, where we mostly use ginkgos as landscape ornamental trees, shade trees, and filler trees like this, we go for the male trees, which gets us into that problem of having that much more pollen floating around. Is Ruth here today? Hey, Barb and Diane. Ruth asked this question. And as with Priscilla, I have talked to Ruth already, texted and emailed with Ruth, but thought I should tell you what's up with this. This is in the library where Ruth helps take care of the gardens and the plants in the pots inside the library. And she said, I don't know what kind of plant it is, and I don't know, can I cut it back? It's in a small pot. There's no drain holes in the pot. What do I do about this thing here? This is a plant sometimes called money tree, might be called Guyana chestnut. It's a picaria tree. Picaria might be a Picaria glabra, might be a Picaria aquatica. But at any rate, it's just like corn palm, the dracaenas, and some of the others. That it looks kind of like a chaflera where these leaves all meet at one point, but they don't meet at quite one point. They're actually spread out along the branch. And if I cut this main trunk any place just above a node, it will sprout from there. So if you want it to be fuller, because she'd like it to be fuller, then you're going to need to cut one at this level and one at this level and one at this level and let them come back. Or cut these and make cuttings of one leaf, one branch, and one piece of stem, and get some others started and fill the pot with them. But she's also wondering about the pot because it's got no drain holes in it and it's so small that the tree falls over. And this could work. These wicking arrangements are nice, not nice to look at when it's clear like that, but they do work. This is a poinsettia in it. But you've got to get it out of that pot first, and this is the time of year to do that. So anyway, money tree, an interesting plant. Krista says, moving hyacinths? Sure. Is it a good time? Chris is going to move some hyacinths around, and is it a good time to notch the base plate? They're actually, at this point, mostly growing leaf. So the notching would be less effective now, but it's still, when you make the notch, at some point, the plant is going to need to seal over that damage, and that's when the meristematic tissue will form there and a new bulb will form. So the notching is more effective if you plant it in the fall, or if you do that notching toward the end of the growing period when the leaves are dying back. But you can certainly move them and notch them now. I told Steve I'm feeling kind of sorry for the one that I didn't notch because everybody else is bulking up out there. We found some hyacinths. It's a pretty big bulb for a squirrel to dig up, but somebody moved a hyacinth a good 20 feet. There's no way we put that hyacinth over there. And it's coming up quite happy where it is.
Then there's a hand up from Nancy.
Okay, Nancy, go for it.
Hi.
Hi.
So I had a bunch of daffodils and some tulips that I never planted, and I just stuck them in a pot. And I'm wondering, are they just gonna grow leaves this year or
Probably
are
just
they
leaves
gonna
this year.
bloom?
Yeah, probably just leaves this year. It's at this point, because of the warmth, they're going to be coming up with leaves. They won't form that flower first in the cool weather, but they won't die. They'll still grow. Got your email by the way, Nancy, and I'll get back to you with those. I put you on the schedule for the dates that you sent me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
My smart husband unmuted it.
There you go.
We're good for something.
Hey, it takes two of us all the time. I mean, let's face it takes two of us all the time. What were we just talking about men about, Steve and I? Oh, no. Anyway, Rita, you go ahead. I'll think of it later.
So I know you talked about trimming lavender last week or week before. So I have a question about the lavender. Is now a good time to cut it, or should I wait? Like, for example, with the roses, it's too early to trim the roses. Because if we still have like frost, they will die back more if I cut them now. What about lavender? Like, even if I see the new growth underneath, can I do it now?
I always have and have not had a problem with lavender at all. The buds that we leave are not going to just jump out of the ground right away. We'd have to have some severe late. We'd have to have 10 days or 2 weeks of good weather, and then suddenly a really hard cold to hurt the lavender. And as for the roses, I know that many people say that, but if you go to botanical gardens, let's say go to Niagara Falls, the botanical garden, where there is one gardener in charge of the rose garden, and she doesn't let other people cut her roses. She's already pruning roses, and she'll keep pruning roses right into June. The Nancy Lindley was a grower. Great Lakes Roses was her business in the south side of the Detroit area. She's retired now, but she had to prune when she could prune. So the whole bit about pruning too early or don't prune them in the fall, I think you really have to
Plant the peony at the exact level.
I think you have to
So
take that
many
with
of these
Yep.
myths.
grain of salt. And I have already cut some roses back.
You did?
Yeah, I'm there. I'm working in that area. They're getting cut back, and I cut them back really hard. And then I just
How hard?
how hard?
Janet?
Well, I tend to cut the tea roses. Like we have Julia Child out here that
Right.
like her. I cut her back to 1 or 2 buds from the ground every year.
All right.
Some people cut them back and leave some good growth on it, but that's, if you get these roses that at the garden center that are grown by Weeks Roses or one of the West Coast growers, they have such a long growing season and such a good growing season that these roses come to you with canes as big around as marbles, and we never get that kind of real strong growth. If I had that kind of strong growth, I might cut back less than that, but I'm mostly getting smaller growth than that. So your choice how far back you want to cut them. The one of the shrub roses that I cut back, which is a shrub rose, I just shorten the canes because if I cut that all the way back, I'm probably not going to get much bloom on it this year.
All right. So you think it's safe to cut the lavender? What about lavender that doesn't show growth yet? Should I leave it bushy? What do you think? It's not gonna show any growth?
If the lavender isn't showing any buds down low, that's usually because it hasn't been cut back regularly, and the wood is getting old. And
It died.
yeah, and if the wood is getting older like that, then I might, rather than cut that branch back that doesn't show any buds on it, I might lay that one down on the ground and bury it, let it root and come back up again.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
Well, I have I have 3 or 4 different kinds of lavender, and one of them looks like as if it's summer. It's all fluffy, and the branches look fresh. I actually feel awful cutting it down. I will anyway, Others, the English lavender, the heat hose, always looks so scraggly.
Yeah, they are. They definitely have different genetic makeups. There are so many kinds of lavender. I can't remember Pat's last name up at Lavender Lane in Northport, in Michigan. One of the herb gardeners that we knew well. She collected lavenders and had, I think, 18 different kinds of English lavender. And then there are some others that are half hardy, but most of the varieties we've got are English lavender varieties of one kind or another. And yeah, they are going to be more or less vigorous, and we cut them back more or less hard based on that. I think Bernie has given herself a little symbol of looks like a witch's hat. You guys are cool. Steve, are you keeping track of time? Oh, looks like we should have officially started. Yep.
Yep.
Yep. Do you want to officially
Ready?
start?
Good evening and welcome to Free4All Friday. All gardeners are welcome. Come and celebrate growing and cultivating problem solving.
This is our 72nd session of Free4All Friday. It's April 3rd, Good Friday. It is a Good Friday. We are definitely seeing very strong signs of spring around us. We're coming to you from gardenatz.org. I'm Janet McConovich.
And I'm Stephen Nicola.
And we should change this picture and get your coat off, Steve, because we haven't needed those coats. Yeah, you needed it this week for a little while, right?
I wear it a lot more than people would think.
If there's anyone here who doesn't know about our website or about us, we'd love it if you took a look at the website. It's gardenatz.org. We don't have sponsors, ads, cookies, any of those things. It is our a website run entirely by Stephen and me to have a place where we could put our writing and build on it and do things like these webinars and Free4All Fridays and the other things that we're doing. We try to make things available to people. We know that, especially since we've got thousands of articles up there, we know that sometimes they don't pop up in a minute's time. We don't have a really strong search engine, but they are there somewhere, and we'll help you find them if you can't find them yourself. And we will put more up if we have time and if we have requests from people. Quite often the emails that we get during the week or the texts that we get during the week with questions prompt us to put something that we haven't yet put on the website onto the website. The Free4All Fridays tell other people. There's no reason to keep it a secret. Anybody can come who wants to come. The link is always there on the Fridays page, so all you need to do is go to our website and click the Fridays in the menu, which might be the horizontal lines indicator, or it might look like this on your screen. But just click that link and you'll be there with us. Why did I put it in twice? I don't know. We are our season 7 weekend walkabout webinars begin next Saturday, talking about weeds. We call it Weeds Continued because we have talked about weeds before. We're now moving into weeds on a larger scale and with different techniques. Neil DeBoll from Prairie Nursery is our main speaker to help us out with that, and we are just burning the candle at both ends working with him. He's a delightful and high energy person, so I don't think you're going to want to miss that. Okay, any questions, Steve? Was there something?
Nothing in chat.
Okay.
Oh.
Good. We did have our walk. It's my brother-in-law. I enjoy going to the No Kings protests because I feel like I've got a little more voice there than I do just calling out my representative if I don't like how things are going. But I also like the fact that it's mostly people of my age, mostly, not entirely, and it's very clever people. I mean, look, fight truth decay. It's just, you walk and people, we look at each other's signs. My brother-in-law made his sign directly from the Declaration of Independence. And I was in Boston this week for a couple of days. You'll see Boston Gardens again. This is Boston Gardens. Friendly person there. I had too many things to say this time. I actually had a roll that I carried around and unrolled with all of my complaints on it. And then after we got done with the No Kings rally last week, we dived right back into the questions, which this time of year, Leave the Leaves is way up on that list. Judy wrote to say, I want to leave the leaves, and this is her garden. She said, I've got they're dry, they're crispy. You can see that the plants are coming up through them. There's hellebore coming up there. Miniature species tulips coming up, astilbe coming up. Those plants will come up. What Judy wants to know is, can I take some of them off? And I want to keep the insect life, the wildlife. Does it matter if I take the top off, or how much should I leave on there? I can't answer that. If anyone has seen anything where there have been studies done as to what microfauna, which kind of insects and other animals live in the top layer versus the bottom layer, let me know and we can look into that. But I don't really know. We leave the leaves and just let them go away on their own, except where the hats seem to be stuck together, and then we'll knock them off the top of plants that are pushing them up. But even if we don't knock them off, they do come up through. And there is, by the way, nothing that anybody can, no, that's not right. There is, however, a lot of stuff written out there that says that oak leaves are bad for plants and they make the soil acid. This is not true. It has been disproved by a number of different extensions. It's also the case that that people have tried to make acid compost who needed it with oak leaves, and they don't make an acid compost. Neither do pine needles. All organic matter tends to go through a process of being slightly acid, then neutral, then alkaline, but they're not making things acid. Oak leaves can cause a problem if you have a drainage problem and water sits on top of them. The tannins in the oak leaves can be antagonistic to some other types of plants and insects. But that's a drainage problem. It's really not the oak leaf problem. For the most part, the oak leaves go away after the winter is done. They are not eaten by worms. Worms don't like oak leaves. They don't like the tannins that they're eating out of the oak leaves. They like apple leaves and birch leaves and maple leaves and poplar leaves. The oak leaves tend to break down once the fungus starts becoming active in the warmer weather. So they will break down and they will go away. And plants just end up coming through. When you think about how big the plants are, they're going to rise up above those 4 inches. This is snowdrops in our garden. And you might look and say, well, the thing is that I want the plants to present themselves better. In that case, you might do what we call a veneer mulch. You get a nicer kind of mulch, processed bark, and you kind of put it on top of some of the leaves around the plants that you're highlighting. But we don't mind seeing these things. It's only going to last a week or so before the plants themselves cover up all of the debris from last year.
Arena asks, don't they need to be double shredded?
No, they do not need to be shredded. They break down faster if they're shredded. There's a pile back here in the corner of our yard where our neighbor here, who mows all his leaves and sucks them up so they become partly shredded, he piles those up for us. And I'll tell you, that pile is less than half the size that it was in the fall, because they're going to break down faster when they're shredded. And they can look they can look finer in texture and show plants off a little more. Now, lawn is another matter. I've raked the lawn. It's shady lawn anyway, but to put leaves and let them lay on top of lawn grass, it is not going to work. Lawn grass is not, even the shade tolerant grasses like the fine fescues and the chewing fescues are not suited to being able to push up leaves or to grow in the shade. So you do want to take the leaves that blew in over the windy winter off of the lawn.
Diane says she too has wondered just how much leaves to leave in the spring.
Yeah.
Aren't we inhibiting some growth by leaving too deep a layer of leaves? How deep is too deep?
Yeah, I'd be interested to see someone tell me that. This is part of our garden. I've cut down what's in here. These are butterfly bushes that are in here, and I've cut them down. You can't see them. I cut them down right down to the ground. But even though I've cut them down to the ground, when I walk on this, it feels like a mattress, because I've got a buildup of pine needles and leaves and stuff there. You can see them there, and that might inhibit some plants. But I don't know that I've ever seen anyone actually test absolute depth of leaves, and then we'd have to look at what kinds of leaves and what mix of leaves that are there. I haven't seen that it makes a difference, as long as we're not piling them on so deep that nothing can grow through them. This is where the butterfly bushes are. There's the edge of one of those dwarf pines. And we have bulbs that come up where the butterfly bushes are, and I like those bulbs to get a chance to come up and show themselves off. So they've pushed their way through the mulch that's there, and they'll fill that area, and then the butterfly bushes will come back up around them.
Judith is asking, how about leaving the straw? I covered some oversown areas of my lawn with some straw last September, and some of the straw is still there. Straggly and sparse, but still there. Should I rake it up to encourage the grass or cover the clover to grow? They need every bit of help they can get. Similarly, there are easily 2 inches of straw in my raised beds. I've read that I can leave them and just push them aside to transplant seedlings. Do you agree?
On the lawn, straw, the little stalks of straw are not casting much shade. And think about a piece of straw there and a blade of grass coming up. It can go around either side without any problem. It's a little different trying to find its way past a leaf. That's one of the reasons that straw is often used as the mulch for seeds. So you can leave it on there and let them come back up through there. And it is true that if you've got a bed of straw, you can just push open and put your seedlings in. It happens all the time. Where were we, Steve? Was it Seed Savers Exchange? Where they're growing in bales of straw?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah. I do. We can go on with another question here while you look and see what's there that people are asking in chat, Steve. We had a Garden by Janet and Steve last week. We were out there, but no one came. Well, just myself and the person whose hydrangea it is. So you've missed your opportunity to see how you prune that blue hydrangea, which means that we're back to just being able to show you pictures. This is a hydrangea macrophylla, the blue and the true pink mop head hydrangeas are hydrangea macrophylla or hybrids of that. And this one is a hybrid called Endless Summer Blue something or other. It blooms on old wood as the true blue species does, and some new wood grows. It bloomed last year, and the owner, Sonia, said, well, I want to make sure it blooms again. These blooms came from lower down on the branches later in the year. That's the second bloom on the hydrangea. To bloom the first time, the first season of the blue hydrangea in June, toward the end of June, they need the bud at the tip of the branch. Here's what the buds at the tips of those branches look like. If that tip bud isn't alive, and you see it's all brown and dried out in here, if that tip bud is not alive after winter, then that portion that formed in there, which would have been old enough to bloom first, is not going to bloom. And that's what happens to most of these things in the middle of the continent where we are here, or if a deer comes by and eats them all off of there. But the weather tends to wipe them out. So we had no live buds, so we took out old canes. We don't want this hydrangea to get big. They can get big, 5-6 feet tall when they get going. Sonia doesn't want it to get big. So we went through and we took the oldest canes. See that old cane right there? It's gone. That old cane right there, gone. We took them out right to the bottom. The new growth will come up. By the end of the year, if it's a good year for it, the buds will form at the tip, and maybe they'll make it through the winter, or meanwhile they can bloom from the bottom in the second bloom season. So first we took out the old wood, and then we shortened. So now we've got old wood gone. Now we shortened the canes because we don't want it to get huge. And that's all that we do. And you can do that right after they bloom, or, in the middle of summer, or you can do it before they start blooming, before they bud out in the spring. Either way works. I hope that makes sense, because
Nancy wants to know, how can you tell it's old wood?
come on. How can you tell that's old wood? Look how thick this wood is, and it's developing bark. See, this wood is still honey colored and smooth. The newer wood has not had time to develop as much girth, as much height, or as much bark. It is a woody plant. So it's the old wood and the decrepit wood. We took out a lot of spindly little stuff too. We don't need these little tiny guys here. They're not going to give us much in the way of a growth that could support a flower. And if it did produce a flower, it'd flop right over.
What about oak leaf hydrangeas? Sue is wondering, cut it to the ground or partially?
Oak leaf hydrangeas also bloom from the tip bud. If the tip buds are alive in the spring, you can leave that branch, let it bloom, and then shorten it or take it out, whatever you want to do to it after it blooms. If the tip buds are dead on the top of the oak leaf hydrangea, they are not, almost for certain, not going to bloom this year. But they're a little more hardy than the blue and the pink hydrangeas. I would say 3 years out of 5 in Michigan, we get bloom on the oak leaf hydrangea. We cut some of those 2 weeks ago, and you missed that one too, you guys. We need you to look at our calendar, check the workshops, webinars and workshops page on our website, and go to the calendar and pick some of those dates and send us a text or an email and say, I want to be at this date, at this place. And you can come there and do it with us. We started.
Hang on. New question. Why does a large forsythia not bloom? Pruned it to about half height, but it made no difference. Did not prune it last year. No flowers again now. It gets 4 to 6 hours of sun. Somebody else said their forsythia is not blooming yet anyway.
Some forsythias we saw, was that last week, Steve, that we were coming back from that talk?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, some forsythias are blooming already and are earlier. I'm not going to ask the question and expect an answer right now, but the first question that I ask people is, did it ever bloom well? Many forsythias, especially the old standard Linwood Gold, everybody had Linwood Gold back when I was growing up. Linwood Gold is not bud hardy. The plant, its branches, its leaf buds are all hardy to a pretty cold winter, but the flower buds get killed in the winter. So they would often bloom below the snow line. Whatever was protected bloomed, so they bloom down here and not up at the top. Or they just don't bloom at all. All the flower buds get killed. It doesn't kill the leaf buds, so they leaf out quite well. There have been a lot of new ones developed. Minnesota Landscape Arboretum and Vermont and Ontario's, forgot the name of the Center for Hardy Plant Research. They've come out with a bunch of them. Northern Sun, Meadowlark. There are a bunch of forsythias that are hardier, but you may simply have one of the older forsythias that's just not hardy, bud hardy. Otherwise, I can't tell you that what else might be. They could have gotten eaten over the winter. Okay.
One more, Judith. What to cut and what to keep on lace cap hydrangeas?
Lace cap hydrangeas are the same as the blue and the pink. They're going to bloom best on the bud that grows from the top. And some of them have secondary blooms way late from low down, so you'll get the plant all green, and late in the summer some flowers coming out from down below. But same thing, treat them the same way. The blue and the pink hydrangeas that most of us have are crosses with the lace caps. They're with serrata is the species, hydrangea serrata, and they cross the serrata and the macrophylla, the big leaf hydrangea, to get all of these varieties. Okay, can I move on to design here?
Yes, my dear.
We started, Steve told, we were talking about this earlier, it's kind of a lot to tackle design in short periods of time, but we like doing design, and it's more fun to do than dealing with problems all the time. So we started last week designing a new landscape bed, and talked about where we got to this point where we're now choosing plants in order to arrange the design. We're following the process that I follow when I do a design. It's not the only way to design, but it's the way that I work it. So we've gotten to the point of saying, what do you want out of the garden? What are you trying to do? Nancy and David want to put some plantings over on the right side of the house to balance all that they've got over on the left side of the house. They tried putting a Japanese maple into a bed on the far side, and it didn't do well because there's a lot of wind there. So we've already said, what do you want? You want more landscape. You want we'd like to have some purple color. We like unusual plants. We like fine plants. We don't like plants that overgrow their place. Get all those things that your wishes and objectives out of the way. And then you look at the site, and the site here is very windy. It comes straight out of the west right up here. So we also need plants that can handle the wind. Last week, I suggested several plants that were that could be candidates to go there, and Nancy and David have looked at them. Those plants were Siberian pea weeping Siberian pea tree, a juniper, maybe one of the blue junipers grafted to a standard, or the compact or dwarf sergeant crab called Tina. And they looked at those. In between, I sent them a couple of others that occurred to me. And I also suggested that if you're looking at where you're going to put the design or put the new planting, look at kind of the bulk or the mass that you have that you're balancing and say, if I've got that kind of a mass to balance, I need that kind of a size on the other side. And maybe it's not going to be right next to the driveway. Maybe it'll be even a little bit further forward. That's entirely up to you when we play looking at that. So the others that I gave them, and I tell people to do this, if you get a name from somebody, click on images in your whatever your search engine is and search for that plant. It may be better to search for it by scientific name, but search for that plant by images so that you can get some idea of what it looks like. Understand that you're primarily going to get catalog pictures, so they're going to be wonderful and at the best part of their season, but you'll also get things that are there from botanical gardens or that people have posted themselves. So it gives you an idea what to look at. I suggested adding to the list that we had last week for Nancy and David. I suggested a cotoneaster grafted to a standard. They call them a weeping tree, but it's really a shrub grafted to a standard. This one is grafted, and you may be able to tell from the stake that's holding it up here. It's an interesting way to stake, but it works very well. That they can get top heavy until this bottom part gets big enough. You might buy them looking like this. I think they're pretty plants. They get their fruit toward the end of the summer, and they'll hold their fruit into the cold. When it gets cold in the winter, birds usually come and eat it too. And it probably looks like this when you buy it. Their fruit is there set and beginning to ripen on this one. This is a cotoneaster that I'm training up 3 branches. I don't have a picture of it for as it got further along, but cotoneaster is one of those very willing plants to do that kind of thing. It's generally, and this is the one that's used as the weeping top, is cotoneaster hessii. And by the way, I know people say cotton Easter because it certainly looks like that. There's no wrong way to pronounce the dead language that we call these plants in, but for the most part, that's cotoneaster. You say each syllable in it. The hessii tends to have big loops. It makes a more graceful weep than some of the cotoneasters do. This is cotoneaster rock spray that you probably see more often around here. The leaf is smaller and more oval, where this one is longer, and the branches are a little more, a little shorter in their arc. This one is one that I've just pruned over at a client's place because we don't want it out on the sidewalk, so I reach in and take branches back out of it. So weeping cotoneaster trained as a weeping tree is one suggestion. Another is a peach tree, Prunus bonfire, sometimes called crimson bonfire. It is a peach tree. It will produce peaches. I've admired them for many years. They have a particularly nice new foliage color where they come out kind of purple. This one is glorified to a certain extent. Usually by the time it gets to the end of the season and there's fruit on them, they're not so deep purple, but I'm not sure how they do that. They're more often, whoops, I'm going the wrong way. They're more often like that later in the season where you're seeing more green, but they are sturdy little trees. They are little trees. I wish I had a picture of Georgia's in my neighborhood here. Georgia, though, is not here right now, and I can't find a picture that I took of it, but they probably get to, must be between 5 and 6 feet and maybe a little bit wider than that across. Okay, so David and Nancy looked at these plants, and we're going to move on toward, once we've picked a plant they like, then start choosing other plants to use in the design. So let's hear from Nancy and David. What did you decide to do?
Hi, Janet and Stephen.
Hello.
Well,
Go ahead.
we went through the process of elimination, and I can't remember the first.
Weeping
the
weeping.
weeping pea. Yeah, we're not wild about yellow flowers,
Okay.
so we eliminated that one. the standard Jupiter, the two shrubs, the tall shrubs against the garage are Jupiters. So we didn't necessarily want to have another Jupiter there.
Okay.
The cotoneaster, which many years ago we puzzled nursery people by asking for cotton Easter.
Yeah. Yep.
We never did find it. So, but that looks a little bit too wily for us. You can probably tell by the rest of our plantings that we're a little more restrained.
Uh-huh.
The peach tree, it has the drooping leaves, and that concerns me because if David sees drooping leaves, he's going to water and water and water.
It's good to know that about yourself.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So, so far we like the Sargentina crabapple.
Okay.
The bloom is nice. We're interested in having something blooming and fragrant. It produces the red fruit, which apparently birds like.
It stays little tiny fruits. They stay on into the winter, and the birds do like them.
Okay. Are the birds going to consume them, or are they going to end up all over the lawn?
They generally the bird whether they consume them.
Depends. It actually depends on the year and how hungry the birds are. Also, there's a lot of the sergeant crabs are alternate bloom. They'll bloom real heavy one year and lighter the next year. So you're not necessarily going to always get that huge massive bloom and fruit.
But we've seen robins, we've seen 6 or 7 robins land in one and strip it. And then we've seen other years where they don't get into it at all because maybe they had a lot of fruit of some other type someplace else. The cedar waxwings will stop and strip it out. The Sargentina crab apple is short enough that if you live on a lake, a good-sized goose can reach up and eat the fruit on it, and you'll find them doing that too. But if it does fall, it falls below the branches, and it is little tiny stuff. It's not like picking up crab apples. These things are the size of marbles.
Mm-hmm. And that was another reason I thought it was good to move it out further toward the sidewalk and away from the driveway.
Yeah.
So we like your idea, and we measured the garden at the other end of the house. It was about 12 by 15, I think.
Something like that.
So yeah, so our garden in front, you're right, should be something comparable.
It can help to be. It doesn't have to be because it could be taller or brighter or whatever to balance.
Right.
Same works. And for other people who have something like your situation where you've got a good picture like that, you can skip some of the scale drawing stuff and just block it out and say, well, let me see, we've got a big rectangle, we've got a sidewalk behind it. There's a circle about this big and a circle about that big. And then you can just start playing around with what could fit in here. And if you know that this is a 10 to 15 feet across, then you know that this one is 10 to 15 feet across.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, you can say, all right, so I put one plant and that plant might be 5 feet across. There it is. I'll plop a 5-foot circle in there and say, what can I do? We'll worry later about, does it go in the middle? Does it go to one end? But how much room do I have to accompany it with other plants and start making a list?
Okay. One question about the crab tree, though. How susceptible is it to
Not.
apple scab?
It's resistant to scab and rust. It's one of the nicest things about the
It's
sergeant.
truly one of the better crab apples, the sergeant, whole line of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you quite often find them just green as can be. If you hold one of the leaves up to the light, you can see that they got infected and they beat the infection. There's a light colored spot in there that never progresses to the rest of it's a very interesting thing. But sorry.
Now we are talking about living things that do weird things, so don't hold us to it 100%. But we'll go 99 and 44% pure.
I just don't want to end up with a kind of a bare
bare
tree
tree
every summer.
Yeah, but a skeletal crab apple in August, I hate that myself. Our Louisa, one of the reasons we kept the crab apple that's in front of our house, which is too big, but it's a Louisa and it also is resistant. And the neighbor's crab apples are bare, absolutely bare in the late summer, and ours has still got its leaves. It feels almost bad to just have that and not have it in everybody's yard. So now you move into the point of we're making a plant list. So now we need to think of some other things that you might want to put there that's in the full sun and in a windy area. So we don't want to put things like delphiniums that are just going to get knocked flat, for instance. So we start picking other plants. I tend to, when I make this list, go for things that have some contrast with the first plant that I worked on, because the first plant you work on often becomes the focal point, becomes, I'm going to design around this thing. So since the Tina crabapple is a pink bud that opens white, then you probably don't want to have things that have pink flowers on them. You might want some contrasting colors or contrasting foliage colors, and you might want some things that are coarser in texture and finer in texture. So now is when we start working on making another list. I like the dwarf the dwarf spruces, like the bird's nest spruce and the dwarf firs a lot, and they make a nice contrast to the crabapple that holds fruit in the wintertime, because you've got evergreen going with the tree.
Yeah.
They do require pruning, dwarf being, a relative term. They're going to try to keep going. So there are some things that you might think about, like the blue star juniper does tend to stay low and stay blue, but it is, as you said, another juniper, and you've already got some of those. Maybe you don't want to have that. The coral bells are a good evergreen feature, but they're not truly evergreen. They're going to need more work than a woody plant would, because you have to divide them on a regular basis. Let's see, other things that would go with. Sedums, of course, are always wonderful, especially the sedums that look good in the wintertime. There's a sedum with purple late in the summer called October Daphne, that the leaf itself has a blue purple cast to the underside of the leaf, and the flower itself is a deep wine color late in the summer, and that might make a good companion mass as a ground cover. But you're going to need to look into some of those kinds of plants now. I can do that for you too, and we'll work on next time putting plants together and playing with shapes and masses together. And by the way, everybody else who's listening, we're doing this, Stephen and I, because we'd like to be able to go out to someone's house and play around with plants. Actually take some plants in pots and move them around and say, what if we put this here? What if we put this there? What if we combine this with this? That's the real fun part of gardening. And we'd like to
brings back so many memories of us working too, that we truly did love doing gardens.
Yeah. It's just something great about doing that. So we'll work on a list. I'm sure Nancy and David will. They have plants that they like and plants that they've seen in various places. And we'll pass them a few names of plants and show them to you next time. But if you would think of some names of plants too, if you had something that looked like that Tina crabapple and wanted to put something with it, what would you put with it? Suggestions are always welcome. People don't have to take suggestions, but if we have 10 plants, that's what I tell people. If I have 10 plants, I can do almost anything with them. And those 10 plants, as long as they were chosen to meet the site requirements for the wind, for the full sun, and the owner's requirements for not being messy, for bringing color at different times of year, all of those other kinds of things, then they belong on the list. If they don't measure up, we toss them off. So think about types of plants. Yes, and David, you're going to be doing the same thing, I'm sure.
Yep, I've been taking notes of what you said as fast as I can.
Okay.
It's recorded.
Okay, that's right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Donna was asking, are Cotoneaster evergreen? Most of them are. There might be a couple of them, but even they are iffy in this area, if I remember right.
Yeah, most of them are deciduous. Steve's right. There's one called willow leaf. What did we put at Barb and Greg's? Remember, Steve? I like that one so much.
Oh, that one's so good.
Yeah, I think it's salicifolius. The willow leaf one is evergreen. There are evergreen cotoneasters, and they use them a lot in England and Europe, but we're colder than that, and they don't work that way for us.
Chris was suggesting, what about Ruby Falls redbud for that area?
I did look at it with the idea of the plant that Nancy and David like things that are purple leaf, but Ruby Falls gets bigger than people think it does. I will,
Every red bud does.
if you want, I'll show you pictures of our friend, client Dennis and myself pruning away at a Ruby Falls that was probably wet, and they weep at whatever height that the grower set them to. This one began weeping at about 6 feet. It went up to about 8 feet and was probably about 15 feet across. And we took out a truckload of wood when we decided to prune it. I didn't put that on the list because I didn't think that Nancy and David wanted to get themselves into pruning something that grows that quickly and has the tendency to get that big. Otherwise, it would be great because the color is good and the weeping structure is good.
Bernie is wondering, what about hellebore?
Hellebore is good except that windy situation where here's a plant. Hellebore is a plant that really likes to be the edge of the woods, down in depressed locations where it gets out of the wind. And if we put it there, its evergreen quality is not going to be as sturdy. It'll burn the leaves and could even cause the flowers to burn as they come up in the spring. So a little too exposed for hellebores.
Okay.
But think along the right lines.
Yeah, Diane in Prudent is asking, whenever possible, my question is dealing with scale on my magnolias.
Mm-hmm.
These are large plants, 15 tall, 10 feet wide. At the end of last summer, the branches were covered with scale. I sprayed with neem oil last fall, which seemed to dry the scale. However, I believe there are eggs which will soon be hatching. I want to head off another infestation.
Magnolia scale is it's the largest scale. You can't miss it when these little guys are stuck on the branches of a magnolia. But it also has a different timing than most of the other scales. The crawlers are going to come out in mid to late August. That's when the crawlers that are susceptible to, they're not shielded yet. They haven't got a thick coating on them, so you can actually kill them. You can even spray them off the plant then. At this point in the springtime, the adults are still there and still alive and still laying eggs underneath. You could scrape them off if you wanted to, or you could use a systemic insecticide to affect the adults. But your best bet is to aim at them in the late summer. And in the late summer, even just taking the hose on a hard spray and washing the main branches off knocks crawlers off. Releasing ladybugs knocks crawlers off, kills crawlers. But those things need to be pointed at that time of year when they're most susceptible. So now is not a great time to do it.
Can we repeat what we two really like to do in other gardens? Well, when we worked, I'd like to pick up the plants, bring them out, bring them to the garden, lay them out, and then plant them and feel good about walking away from it and coming back and looking at it. The most pleasure I get is photography in the garden.
Yeah. And I love doing the designs, and I love seeing them the design comes together and a space be transformed. As long as we have a before picture, we can show people before and after. And it's probably the thing that Steve disliked the most about photography and our planting times together was when I would come in and say, do you have a before picture? And he'd go, oh. Steve watched the ospreys working on a nest on a cell phone tower today. They are big birds, big eagle-sized birds. And this guy would bring in a branch and hand it off to the one in the nest and then fly off and get another branch. The company that's in charge of the cell tower has cleared those branches off in other years, but the ospreys say, nope, this is too good a place. We're back again.
I wouldn't go up there and mess with one of those birds. They've got sharp beaks and talons.
Yeah. Now, in terms of design, some people think that design is all about deciding on delphiniums and crabapples and sedums, but design, especially landscape design, is dealing with spaces, and there may not have to be any plants involved at all. When I decided to go back to college and study landscape design, it didn't last very long because there was, in 4 years of getting a landscape architect's degree, there was one semester required of plant identification because plants are not that important. Someone else can help you figure out which plants. You have to be able to deal with spaces. And our other design that we took on with Bernie has to do with her nephew's house where he's moved in and has water issues to deal with, big dogs that run through and bring the mud into the house. And he's not interested in the plants. He'd like to just get this problem taken care of, and that's part of landscape design too. So they've been talking, Bernie and her nephews, about what they want and how much space is involved in what you just looked at there in that area. Because I said we need to have some idea how much space is involved, and they've been texting back and forth. And Bernie has developed a scale drawing to start with. So we have. What you're seeing here is the garage, the green lawn area that you could see in the picture a minute ago, and this is the edge of the pavement that you could see. The fence runs along here and here. So I'm going to flip that around to be the same orientation that if you're standing on the little patio area next to the driveway is just off here to the left. Now you're looking back here, just like if you stood on this, you'd be standing right here and looking back at the fence over that way. So to orient you that way, one of the things that we needed was to need to know how much water is going to fall on this roof and end up coming down through the downspout, so that we have to find a place for that water to be able to spread out and soak in someplace else. So we needed the measurements of the roof and and that gave us the square footage of the garage, so we can figure out the number of gallons of water. There is a calculation for that, and I'll deal with that with Bernie. But that tells us that if we decide to reroute that gutter to just below the surface, so to start at just below the surface and have these young men, I understand it's two brothers that are in the house.
Yes.
Have them dig out a rain garden, a place where there's a trench that the gutter goes into and then it empties into and downhill here. We need this space to be big enough to take the number of gallons of water that could fall in a 1-inch rainfall onto this roof. If there's more than 1 inch of rain, it may have to overflow. We might be able to make it deeper, but that's what a rain garden is all about, or sometimes called a soak away. I don't know that that's big enough, what I've just drawn there, but that's what we're working toward at this point. And I'm telling them, in terms of landscape design and dealing with space, we need to leave space here and here for those big dogs to run along the fence, because they will run along the fence. It's just what they're going to do. So the rain garden can't be right up against the fence. It needs to have enough space, and it needs to be deep enough. So we'll figure that out by square footage of a deeper area, a less deep area, and a shallow space all around it. And then perhaps, and I find that this is another situation that can work well with younger homeowners. Why not put a path in that you put stone on? Why bother having to put ground cover or lawn that you have to mow, or ground cover that you have to weed, if you can pave a path for the dogs to run on in that area? So if we leave enough room to pave it, that could look good, and the path could start right at the edge of the patio and curve out here and become an attractive line to lead your eye through that garden. If that line went this way, it would lead your eye away from the utility pole over here. It would lead your eye this way and across. And if we moved it a little bit out further, and the fire pit, we were told, can be moved, if that whole rain garden comes out a little bit further, there's no reason that the back edge of the rain garden, this area, could be retained with an attractive stone, say field stone. That's what we've done. Our yard was over height at the house. The soil was on the windowsills of the lower level of the house. I lowered that whole area because we don't want soil sitting on our windowsills. We don't want water pouring into the spaces around the window. I lowered that area and retained the edge with field stone. And that could be what these young men would be looking at across their backyard. They could be looking at the back side of their rain garden, retained with stone, and a stone path behind it, or a grass path behind it. So
Jen?
that's where we start. What's your reaction to that, Bernie? What do you think?
I have been trying to talk him into that because if he really thinks about it, when all four dogs are at my sister's house, they run in circles around the yard, and even though they had nice grass, it still becomes a path of mud. So he's got to have something there that he can mow over if he wants to. That's easy, which would be the flagstone. He could have grass or something between it. So it looks kind of greenish from a distance, maybe, if that's what he wants. But it's if you just leave grass, they're just going to pound it down anyway.
Yeah, they do, and it will depress. I mean, where animals run regularly, it becomes a sunken trail, and you either have to keep popping it up and adding stuff to it, so you can spread the weight out that way. That's the first place to start with. Now, what happens to the rest of this space, and where the fire pit might get moved to or not, whether we leave a space in the landscape in what goes where, say in ground cover against the garage. If there's a door that might get put there, then we talk about where that door goes. But let's start with that right now, and we'll figure out dimensions for this area. And once we've got dimensions, then we can start laying it out on the ground and seeing how it will work out. So can you present that to the guys and see what they say?
I can. I just snapped a picture of yours so I can show them that
Okay.
and give them an idea because I was suggesting, rocks and stuff that could be in there to help build things up. And I said the goal is low maintenance for you guys. You can golf on Sundays, but you have the dogs who are running around and you can have a couple guys over and stuff.
Yep.
And he's got a neighbor that the way this neighborhood is built is odd. There's houses and next to garages, they all have very old maple trees and the same for the front yard. Why they did it that way, I don't know, but his neighbor is stuck with all the roots from Pat Street, and Pat gets water from the other side, only as a rental, so he can't really say too much over there. But yeah, I think what I don't understand also is why would they put a gutter in the back of the yard and not put it up towards like the driveway and let it run that way?
Well, because one reason to not have a gutter dumping onto a driveway is because of ice in the wintertime. Even just dripping off of a gutter, you can end up with a slick area there. But sometimes gutters, drain systems are put up without thought, and they can be moved around and changed. But we'll move forward from here, and then we can figure out what happens with the front space once we make sure that the main issue, which is the water, is taken care of.
I mentioned tomatoes and herbs, and his head blew up because he's just trying to get his head around how to make this water go somewhere that's not up against the garage and stuff.
And he's got the right direction. Do what it is that's most important to you first. All the rest of the things, maybe someday they'll decide that they want to grow a tomato or some herbs of some kind. They might want to do that. They might never do that, but we still have a landscape out there.
I wouldn't call that out because his brother is very into.
Yeah,
Whoops.
there are.
I think I clicked the mute button by mistake. Sorry, Bernie.
Turn your microphone back on there, Bernie.
Okay.
Yeah, there. Sorry.
I was thinking that maybe there's that space along like the side of that patio. I sent you this measurements from across there. I think it's like 20 feet or something. And so it's a good space. And, maybe it's a little bit of a raised garden to keep the dogs out and it's closer to where they do their cooking outside.
Yep. So that's a potential future thing there. That's for sure. They might find that when they do start sitting out there, they'll say, I need a little bit more shade, and that can come from plants. That can come from a pavilion. That can come from an awning coming out from the side of the garage. All of those things are things we think about. I'm thinking about at the kitchen counter, looking out in this area.
Yeah.
That we want to make sure that things are aligned that way. And that's one reason that the fire pit might want to get moved over in line with looking through the window. Thanks for the drawing, and we'll keep working with it from here on out.
Okay. And the gutter's off right now. So, it's just another mud fest. It goes into the wood area, his little wood nook, he calls it.
Yep.
So, and it's just really a mosquito breeding ground. So he's got to lift that up at least on stone or something.
Maybe he can end up doing what we've done in different places, which we stand there during a rain or after a rain and watch how the water flows and feel good about what we did. I can do you remember Vince's, Steve, where after we did all
Yep.
of the terracing on the hill, it started raining hard at 11 o'clock at night, and I got dressed and went out and stood in the driveway and watched the water and where it went.
And it worked.
And it was, yeah, it felt very good to see it working right.
10-minute warning.
Okay, then we'll worry about the Japanese maple then and the other things we have here. This is Irina's Japanese maple, and she's concerned that it leans toward the house and doesn't get branches out to the front, but also that it dies back, leaves out in the spring and then dies back in the summer. And that's a warning signal for thin bark trees like Japanese maple. So I asked for some additional pictures. I said, could I have pictures of, besides the tree itself, could you show me from above that part of the tree here? Because sometimes that part of the tree gets damaged in winter weather changes. And once the cambium on that part gets damaged, it's not conducting enough water. It's not taking enough starch from the leaves to the roots, and come summertime when there's a lot of demand on the roots for water to the leaves, the roots die. They starve to death from cambium damage. But I don't see any cambium damage on here, nor do I see it in the other place where it often happens, which is at the base. But these leaves are doing, what did Bert tell you, Steve? When the leaves curl up, right? When the leaves curl up, you turn the water up. When they curl down, you turn the water down. These are not getting enough water.
Yeah, when you first notice them, if you crumble them, the wet leaves too wet, they'll just ball up. The dry leaves just crunch.
But this is
After winter. You can't judge by that.
Yeah, this happens in the middle of summer, and this happens a lot.
Yep.
So I asked to look at the base of the tree too. I said, could I see the base? Because it's the other place that tends to get cambium damage. And when I saw the base, I told Irina we need to look further at this one, because this is a root that is from the graft. This tree was grafted right here. Here is the desirable weeping tree, and below it with the different color bark, that's the graft that is the rootstock. The rootstock should have flares, and there's no flare. This is just the piece that came off of the upper part, this what's called the scion. This tree has probably got a girdling root that, as the tree has been growing, the tree is running into the root, and that's constricting the cambium. That's just the same as damaging the cambium. And so in the middle of summer, when it needs the communication the most between leaf and root, it's losing out, and the leaves are dying back. So this needs to be dug out around here to identify whether there's a root wrapping around. Take a look at this I saw in Boston Gardens. See, this is a maple. Can you see this root has come up and is wrapped around? That's happening down below, I'm pretty sure. I'm not positive, but I'm pretty sure looking at this tree that's what's going on. So we told Irina we'll work on her with that over a period of time here. We can go take a look at it, you guys. Tomorrow we're looking at two older, bigger trees that might have that same problem. And Michelle has asked, and other people have asked, well, what about when it's a little tree? I can't tell where the flare roots are. I can't tell where it's supposed to go because they're just such little trees. Trees, so this diagram we've shown you before, and it's not a artist rendition. It's the actual diagram of where the roots are of this tree, and it's been done on many trees, and it's typical that the roots tend to be deep right underneath the tree, but soon that peters out, the growth peters out going down, and the growth goes out well past the drip line and is shallower as it gets further away. You're looking at half a foot out here, so 18 inches of roots depth out here, and as much as 4 or 5 feet directly underneath. The flare roots are the big ones that get thick close to the trunk and extend themselves quickly. They are the most important roots. They buttress the tree. They provide the most feeder roots to the tree. This is a shrub, and shrubs work the same way. This is a shrub that I dug up for a client to move to someplace else, and it's showing you that same pattern. I did not bend those roots. That's exactly the way those roots grow. Those are flare roots, and the flare is that thickened part by the trunk, the flare. You can see a lot of hairy roots there. Now look at little roots. Here's a 1-year pine seedling. These are the flare roots. You might say, but this one's way down in the soil. It's 1.5 inches down in the soil. As it grows and thickens, this is going to thicken, and this is going to thicken. this is going to thicken, and these roots are going to be right on top of, they're going to be right next to each other and going in different directions. So all I need to do is make sure that I've got a flare root at, just as it was growing. You can see the stain here as it was growing by itself. That's where they have to be, right there at the surface, or just about at the surface. This is a 2-year mulberry. Mulberries tend to be tap-rooted, so one of the flare roots goes down, like that diagram that you saw of the pine tree. This will peter out. This will only go down a certain depth. It doesn't keep going to China. At some point, it gets out-competed by the other roots, but it will stay down. And this one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 flare roots. Trees have between 4 and 11 flare roots. Nobody knows why they might have as many as they do, but as long as this is planted, can you see where it was growing? As long as it's planted where that flare root can thicken and be at ground level, that's fine. So don't worry too much about it. On a younger tree, most of the roots are going to be flare. These little guys are the secondary roots. Everything that's getting thicker as it gets by the trunk, that's a flare root. Does that sound straight for everybody here? I think we'll finish with this important shrubs haircut. I went to Boston this week because I'm very attached to this garden, and my client who owns the garden said I really could use your help with pruning the yew. The yew is an important plant in this yard. You look in, you see it against the wall. The picture you just saw a minute ago was from the house looking at it, and it needs to stay in shape and has been becoming overgrown. It's growing into one big mass rather than a topiary. And it has been pruned. It's been several years since I've been in the garden working, and the owner has pruned it, but he's not as courageous as he needs to be to prune this. So we cut it. And that involves not just cutting this back smaller. So see right here I'm cutting that back smaller, but also removing some of the wood into the plant in order to let light reach in and keep green coming from inside. This plant has a certain amount of energy. It has to grow new, and we want it to grow in here as well as out on the edge. So it's hard to do this. People feel like they're killing something. You're not killing it, and it's important to do it before the buds break in the spring or after the growth has finished off in late August in order to get the best return for your work, the longest time before it becomes wild again. Now we had to do one thing that I wish that we didn't have to do, and it has to do with this middle projection here. That should be narrower. It will look better if it's narrower, but there is a problem with making it narrower. If I cut back to here, I will have a lot of bare wood without green on it. The green is the energy production. The bare wood is using energy from the green. If we cut to here, because it's a yew, it's still going to sprout out from behind there, but it will likely sprout out from back at the main trunk. And we don't want to lose all of the width of this here. So we've left foliage on the outside to drive the growth, to provide the energy. And I've instructed the owner in the summertime to take his pole pruner, and after he sees new growth coming on the inside, to cut this narrower. I hope that makes sense to you, because that's what it is, and we'll walk off attention in Boston Gardens then afterwards, and we'll close it up. The garden is back here in Beacon Hill. I've walked out into Boston Commons, and I'm turning downhill past the Boston Duck Boat Tours and over to Boston Gardens, which is a very well-used, well-loved garden area right downtown. The famous Make Way for Ducklings statues are there, and always attended by children, always children sitting on them or playing with them. The fountains aren't turned on yet, but they're beautiful regardless. And everything is beginning to grow. The willows are all bright yellow. The witch hazel is blooming. The cornelian cherries, or maybe they're, what's the other one, Steve? What are they called?
Cornus moss.
What do they call cornus moss? Cornelian.
There's Cornus moss and Cornus officinalis. I don't know what they are now.
I don't know what the common name is called. Anyway, they're blooming. I was concerned that I stood and looked for quite some time. I'm not seeing any bees anywhere here, and that, with all those flowers, it bothers me. The quince is getting ready to bloom, and when it blooms, then you'll get your orioles and sap drinkers, nectar drinkers. The star magnolia, that little tree that people plant in courtyards, the star magnolia is blooming. I will have you notice the size of that tree. The weeping beeches are looking beautiful, and I wish people would not climb up and write their names on things. This is a camperdown elm. This is a graft. We have a rootstock, and then we have a weeping top on a camperdown elm. It's big weeper. And it's nice, for me anyway, it's nice to go into public gardens and botanical gardens and see that they have the same problems we do. So here's oak leaf hydrangea, which tend to get chewed, and they're protected. You can see the small openings because they're big rabbit problems in downtown Boston. And if you look here at the roses inside the fencing area, it didn't work. Can you see those roses? Judith will recognize this. They have been chewed mightily. Why would that happen? Well, because in this area, where you might be able to see that they are not chewed, they are not eaten by rabbits, the fencing that is the small gauge fencing goes all the way around. There's an opening in the other one, and the rabbits find that opening. It's nice to see that other people deal with the same things that we do. So go out, see spring. The red maples are blooming. It is springtime. You'll be able to smell it soon. We'll take you through our garden and some more things. Next Friday, we do not have a Free4All Friday because next Saturday, a week from tomorrow, we have our webinar, and we'll take you walking in the spring before the webinar starts to talk about weeds. And now I don't have a way to go quickly to my end that officially says we're done with Free4All Friday, so we'll end it rather unofficially without a mask page. Okay. I think that's probably all here, right? You don't see anything for us to clean up on the chat size?
No, just thank yous and wonderful pictures of Boston. Judith doesn't get downtown very often. It was nice to see.
Yeah. I mean, none of us get around as much as we should. We're too busy crawling around in our own gardens.
Yep.
Have a great holiday, everybody, and we'll see you in a week or so. The next
Ta-ta, everybody. Take care.
2 weeks till the next Free4All Friday. See you later.
Yep.